Teachers, what's your most weirdest story from your workplace? I walked in on the gym teacher and the art teacher having sex. Right in the staff room. The art teacher had the gym teacher bent over the couch and was going to town. Not the way I wanted to start my day, but they seemed to have started it out well. Two colleagues of mine, Frank and Sophie, were having an affair while both being married. They got caught in the shower at a weekend school trip where students and teachers spent the night at a facility. Cue the affair being out in the open. Frank is now sick at home trying to make amends with his wife who's depressed and mentions suicide more than once. Sophie, who is a representative for the Christian Values Party here by the way, got the boot from her husband and now has a thing, I kid you not, with Frank's best friend. Best part is, all the while another colleague and one of my good friends, Bert, found out his wife, Leanne, was having an affair. Bert and Leanne are now separated as well. I tried to be as supportive as possible until the day Claire, another colleague, told me that while Bert was married to Leanne, he was also hooking up regularly with yet another colleague of mine, Zoe, Claire's best friend. I actually forgot about the fact that Claire broke off her marriage with her husband Pete to be with an ex-colleague of mine, Robert, who was dating another current colleague at another campus, Lois. Pete and Lois even managed to hook up for a while after that whole debacle, so yeah. Go figure. You know that saying about truth being stranger than fiction? Well, yeah. Our school's a mess right now. Basically, I'm just happy to eat the popcorn and not be the movie. Student taught at a high school in a more rural area of Georgia. Had a freshman end up in a wheelchair for a while after trying to have sex with a horse/donkey/mule, conflicting stories. He ended up in psychiatric care by the end of the year because he was writing letters to some of the girls detailing horrific, sexual acts he wanted to do with to them. At the second place I student taught at, I asked the class if they had any questions after going over the requirements for an assignment. I had a girl raise her hand and after I called on her, she proceeded to ask me if it was possible to fill a condom with shit and then use it to go fuck myself. She was immediately sent to the office and was removed from that classroom. In high school, we had a beloved teacher and I am still friends with him to this day. However, he viewed taking attendance as a big waste of time, and his class was enjoyable, so kids rarely skipped it, so he'd just give the class a once-over and try to notice if anyone was missing, and sometimes kids would yell out that a kid was sick. Well, on this particular day, he marked everyone as present, including a kid that was not in class, as he was busy murdering his uncle. So the teacher had to go to court and say on the record that no, he is not providing an alibi for the student, he's just terrible at attendance. The administration really got on his ass about attendance after that, and he was good about it, for a few years, and then he went back to his old ways, saying it's very unlikely I'll have another murder during my class. I had just begun class, freshman comp at a community college, and was going over what the day's plan was. A student walked in a few minutes late, sat down, and pulled out his computer. Upon opening the computer, very loud moaning sounds of porn emanated into the room for approximately 3 seconds. Once he got it to stop, he shakily said, "I'm sorry." I stood at the podium and said and a couple of times and then, "Give me just a minute, guys." I stood there looking down at the podium, trying to collect my thoughts as calmly as humanly possible, so I could continue class like nothing happened. After around 15 seconds of pure and uncomfortable silence, a kid from the back of the room let out a 2-syllable, guttural chuckle. I lowered my head to behind the podium with my hands still clasping onto it above my head as I bent over and lost my shit. I laughed hysterically and uncontrollably for at least 30 to 45 seconds, emulating Stewie's ridiculous laugh from that episode of Family Guy but with far more wheezing and high-pitched squealing. The entire class started laughing with me as soon as I started. After I was finally able to collect myself, I apologized to everyone and said I was sorry, and that I had tried so hard to remain composed. Later, when telling this story to other faculty, they agreed that there's no time in pedagogy classes devoted to the appropriate reaction to porn noises being played during class, and that I did the best with what I could by not calling the kid out. I literally didn't make eye contact with him once, or kicking him out of class for something that was embarrassing enough as it was. I will take this a different direction. My first week of teaching had its ups and downs. I was teaching a PE class and had a new kindergarten class for the first time. A few minutes into class, a little 5-year-old boy raises his hand. "Mr. Cowtipper, I have a problem. My pee-pee is really hard right now and I don't know what to do." Holding in every ounce of laughter I had, I told him I was sorry and that we would talk about his problem in a few minutes. Not long after he raises his hand again. "Yes, Caleb? Don't worry. It's not a problem anymore," he tells me with the biggest smile on his face. Gotta love teaching elementary. My mother taught elementary school for 35 years. Second grader told his teacher he was going to shoot her. Teacher blows it off. Next morning my mom waits for the kid to get off the bus, follows him to class and grabs his backpack when he put it up. Yep, loaded revolver. No news, nothing. Cops came, but the principal kept it relatively quiet. This was Houston, mid to late 80s. Wife has been teaching about 15 years. 8th grader in foster care sat in the front left desk, draped his jacket on his right side. Proceeded to whip his junk out and go to Cranktown during class. Wife noticed, called for help without the rest of the class even knowing. Kid didn't get the satisfaction of her looking scared, etc. Hopefully the kid got help. Brother taught at a last chance high school while he was coaching football at another high school. 17-year-old girl walks up after class and calmly says, "Coach, I want to suck your cock." Brother was mid-20s at the time. Said half a second flash by then, No, come with me." Walked her down to the office sure he's about to get arrested because she will twist the story around. Thankfully she didn't. Brother quit soon after. Not worth the risk for a young guy. This happened to my mother when I was in 8th grade. Some girl had written a note about how I had given out blowjobs on the back of the bus, apparently in very graphic detail. The only issue is that I had never even seen a penis in real life at that point. Also, I sat up front. Nevertheless, the school's resource officer took it upon himself to call my mother to tell her, and my dad, the news about their daughter's early morning activities. He never checked the cameras first, didn't interview myself, the bus driver or the boys on the bus. By the time they called me into the office I was already 100% guilty and they were throwing a multi-week suspension at me. I remember sitting in the office crying while they told me how disappointed my parents were in me and how my reputation was ruined. And then they checked the bus camera. Never got an apology. Not me, but the woman who taught across the hall from me. She was teaching a 9th grade math class and her classroom had those old-fashioned pencil sharpeners that attach to the wall and you turn the lever to sharpen your pencil. One of her students was sharpening her pencil every day during class and seemed to take a long time to do so because each time she would stand at the back of class sharpening her pencil for 2 minutes or so. After a week or so of this the teacher went to ask if the student needed help sharpening her pencil. Turns out the girl was putting her vag up against the pencil sharpener and was using the vibrations to get off in the middle of math class. I was a teacher 2010 to 2015. I was teaching high school at an all-girls school and there was this student teacher from a local university. He was 19 or 20. He was always being a jerk to this one senior at the school. I thought it a bit odd he was always focusing on her. Fast forward a few months and it was post-graduation. I was out at a local bar and look over and see them together there. A coworker said they had been screwing for the past few months. I asked him how he knew. There was a smaller teacher's lounge in one of the wings of the school. As there weren't normal classes in that wing, it was not frequented and the setup wasn't as nice. He said he popped in there one day and she was down on her knees blowing him. He closed the door and walked away. Not long after the student teacher found him in his class and asked him what he saw. My coworker was a bit stunned and said he wasn't sure. the student teacher said that he should keep what he saw to himself or the truth could get twisted against him. He implied the senior would state she was going down on my coworker and not the student teacher. There were no cameras or anything in that area, so my coworker decided to keep his mouth shut. I've told this story several times, but here goes. I was an occasional substitute teacher in the town where I went to college. The band director often requested me to come teach if she was out sick, since I was a music major and could work with the kids on their parts. Get in for a day, and my instructions were to break the kids up by section and have them practice their parts. I spent the next hour listening to a miasma of sounds from woodwinds, brass, strings, etc., but no drumming. If you don't know any drummers, they're always playing or banging on their laps, tables, steering wheels, etc. Curious me goes to investigate the drum room, and I walked in on the token female drummer flashing her breasts to the boys in exchange for money. I actually was a teacher. Middle school, 6th to 8th grade. Caught 2 students having sex, 7th grade. Parents were called in. Parents of the boy yell at him, ground him, do the parental thing. Girl's parents go on about how their precious little snowflake wouldn't do such a thing. She was a good Christian girl. Baby born 9 months later. 8th grader whips it out in class and goes to town. Bonus, principal's son. Nothing happened to him. He kept doing it in various classes and moves on to high school. Tries to do it in high school, expelled from the school because daddy couldn't pull strings for him. The teacher for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes got caught having an affair with a fellow teacher by a student. They were going at it in his classroom. Both of them were the holier-than-thou types. Hilariously, they still tried to pull the old Jesus forgives us of our sins and you're going to hell if you mention it again. They were fired. Kid got caught jacking off into the chili by the head lunch lady. School had to spend literally thousands of dollars to call in a massive pizza order because there was not enough time to make another lunch. Kid high AF on meth. Really shitty home life. He was expelled and put into one of those alternative schools. Really ticked off to this day that he wasn't actually given any help, just passed off to someone else. I still think about him to this day and hope he's okay. Then there's the usual, smoking weed in the bathroom, blowjobs in the band room, kids cursing out teachers, asshole parents, kids beating the holy hell out of each other, etc. I don't teach anymore. Subbed at a school years ago. A teacher broke up with a student he'd been statutory raping. She got upset with him and told people they'd been having sex with each other. Then another girl revealed that she'd been having sex with him too. Then a girl who'd graduated the year before said they'd been together as well. And then another, from even earlier. It turned out this teacher, who was coach for one of the girls' sports teams, had been using that team as his own personal harem for over a decade, finding, grooming and seducing at least a dozen high school girls. The school district paid an unspecified amount of money to a lot of people to have him quietly resign and leave town.